Hey Gearheads, Cory here. I just wanted to take a few minutes before we dive into this week's episode to let you know that quality is not up to our normal standard. Matt and I, just like many of you, are working from home. This means our podcast recording as well. This episode was the first that we attempted to record remotely, and we are still working through some technical issues. Matt and I are committed to finding the best option to keep providing content throughout the duration of this pandemic, as well as when we are free to record in our studio together again. Thank you for your understanding, and enjoy the show. Hey Gearheads, and welcome to Garage Talk, a discussion about all things automotive. I'm Cory.
And I'm Matt. And each week, this podcast will serve as a catalyst for discussion on all sorts of topics that grind our gears, excite us, or just need an extra bit of conversation.
And on this week's episode, we're going to talk about something that is near and dear to both of us.
Yes.
But is a dying trend in the automotive industry, and that is manual transmissions.
Good old stick shift.
The discussion starts here with our podcast, but continues on our social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at GT Garage Talk. You can email us your thoughts and opinions on the show at gtgaragetalk@gmail.com, or you can visit our website for more information on how to contact us. That's gtgaragetalk.com. Also, stick around until the end of this episode, and we'll give you some pointers on how you can give back to this channel and help support us in our mission to start a true discussion about all things automotive. Matt, manual transmissions.
Yeah.
I'll start off with just a simple question.
Sure.
I already know the answer to it, and it would be an easy assumption, but do you know how to drive a stick shift?
I do.
Oh, yeah?
I have. Actually, that was one of the caveats for me getting my license from my parents, was that I needed to learn how to drive a manual transmission vehicle before I got my license. So, yeah,
Nice.
I definitely know how, and I enjoy it very much. I've driven a little bit of all of them, everything from Honda Civics and S10 pickups all the way up to 45,000-pound big rigs. So it's a lot of fun.
So what did you learn to drive a stick shift in?
So the principles, the first time I really got behind the wheel of a vehicle that had a manual transmission, I was still learning to drive. My dad had been doing some training with me and things, and the first rig that I actually was instructed on was an early 90s Ranger, short wide single cab, 2-wheel drive, 4-cylinder, 5-speed little pickup, and it was actually a friend of ours, little Ranger at the time. It was the only thing that we had that had a manual transmission. So Dad threw me behind the wheel and said, "All right, let's figure this out together." And of course he had some pointers for me and some things to work towards. And he took me over behind our church at the time, and there was a parking lot that butted up to our parking lot, sloped away from ours, and they had curbs, little parking curbs out there. And so he backed the truck up against one of those curbs with the nose pointed downhill, set the brake, put it in neutral, and shut the truck off and got out. And I got over in the driver's seat, and he said, "All right, back over the curb." And that was training day 101. That was manual transmissions 101, and it's been downhill since. So,
hey, downhill's easy.
that's right.
Uphill in the stick shift, not so much. But that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to remember exactly what it like. There were multiple vehicles in which I learned how to drive a stick shift, but I would say probably the first one that I really quote unquote got it down was my brother's 1987, I believe it was, brown Mazda B2200 pickup. it wasn't spectacular, but it was his first vehicle. He's a couple years older than me.
Yeah.
And so it was his first taste of freedom. I had to apologize to my parents right now because I know they're listeners. Yes, we ragged on it a lot when they brought it home, but it was actually both of our first tastes of freedom because no longer was I dependent on like my parents driving me around. I could bug my brother and
Oh, yeah.
hopefully he'd be nice enough to take me around. But yeah, 1987 Mazda B2200
That's awesome.
pickup. It was a regular cab, long bed. We'll have to get him on a future episode to discuss some of his cars. But
Definitely.
he took me around. Like we went to fields not too far from our house, and he'd say, "All right, we're gonna let you learn." I had the luxury though of learning after he learned, if that is a luxury. So
Yeah.
both my parents tried to teach him in a 1997 Kia Sophia.
Ooh.
Kia has come a very long way since the Kia Sophia. But so I got to watch him learn. Both my parents tried to teach him, and I'll let him tell all the stories, but I got a few good laughs out of the process.
Definitely.
I learned the term lurching. He would give us a good shakedown. I would ride in the back seat while they were practicing up front, and I got a good laugh out of the whole process.
Oh, that's great.
We all got to start somewhere, right?
Absolutely.
So, as with my entire life, I've been able to watch my big brother and learn from missteps or some tough learnings in his life, and said, "All right, well, I know not to do it this way. Let's do it that way." So, plus I had him as a teacher, so he knew what worked for him and what didn't work for him as far as learning how to drive a stick. And so it wasn't, I had my fair share of mistakes, and I've killed my fair share of engines trying to learn how to drive stick. But I would say primarily learned how to drive in a 1987 Mazda B2200
Yeah, buddy.
pickup. I don't know if that truck ever had a name. I was more big into naming vehicles than my brother was. But yeah, that's what I learned to drive in.
Oh, man.
So do you have any fun stories about learning to drive stick shift before we jump into?
Well, I can say that at least for me, it is not a good idea for boyfriends or fiancés or husbands to attempt to learn their wife, spouse, fiance, girlfriend. It's just not a good idea to be a teacher in that position when the relationship is that close.
Don't tell me that. No, that's terrible news.
I'm just telling you.
Turn off the podcast right here.
Just telling you that from my perspective. The one girlfriend and it didn't go well, and one.
Well, now we know why.
Yeah, it just didn't go well. So.
All right, that's interesting. It's funny that you bring that up because Nellie Cruz, my everyday driver, is a stick shift, and my wife does not currently know how to drive a stick shift, and I have been trying since we've known each other to coerce her into learning from me.
Yeah,
and she has stated pretty much what you just said, that it would not be a good idea.
A little bit of what do they call it? Like relationship building exercises, right?
Well, they say in relationships, to build a stronger relationship, you should, teach one another something. So that's what I want to teach.
Right, yeah.
But you're saying that's a no-go.
It's not a good idea.
Steer clear. All right, good to know. Good to know. I'll file that away. But I will encourage Holly not to listen to this episode until I've tried at least one more time to teach her. But yeah, so good
Yeah,
advice.
yeah,
So our listeners can benefit from our mistakes and missteps, huh?
sure, yeah. Well, and it may just be me. I may not be a very good teacher, but
I'll let you know.
okay, all right, that'll work. That'll work.
We'll see. So I've got a couple of really good stories that I've jotted down to remind me to share with our listeners. And so um, the first of which came along first. So I never had a stick shift as my daily driver until I turned 25 and bought my Camry.
Mm-hmm.
So it was something my brother taught me how to do. His truck was a stick. He replaced that truck with a 1989, I believe, Nissan 240 SX, which was also a 5-speed. So I drove that like maybe once, twice. Like I don't have a lot of memories of driving his Nissans, but so like I would occasionally drive stick shift. I knew the practice. I knew what I had to do to make it move and all that stuff, but I was not a regular at it. And you and I have both shared that, we enjoy going to car dealerships and pretending like we're going to buy a car and picking the salesman's brains and stuff like that. So
Definitely.
In episode 1 or 2, I mentioned that my dad drove a Golf and test drove a Golf and it had a switchblade key. I misspoke. It was a Jetta. I was the one that drove the Golf. And so I found a used VW Golf at a dealership here in town. And I was just looking at it because it was the same time he was looking at them and just kind of curious about it. And the guy's like, well, do you want to take it for a spin? And I wasn't going to say no.
Well, sure.
Like, I'm trying to remember how old I even was at the time, maybe 18. And I was like, sure. Problem was, again, it was a stick shift and I was not regularly practiced at it. And it was a turbo diesel model. So at the time, those had like 90 horsepower, like no power whatsoever. So they were very easy to kill.
Oh, yeah.
They couldn't pull you out if you had bogged them down. And so I remember playing it so cool up to this point, and we get in the car and I wish I had $1 for every time I stalled out in that thing.
Oh man.
We took it around town, and by the end of it, I'm sure the guy was regretting ever offering to let me drive that thing around. It was ugly, and I wanted to crawl into a hole and die. We live in Tyler, Texas. There are a lot of hills here in Tyler,
yes,
Texas.
There are.
And like I said, up hills are not easy when you learn to drive a stick shift, especially one with absolutely no power. So, yeah, that was a fun experience. My next fun story, coworkers, they're fun. So in like 2007, 2008, somewhere like that. Well, I guess had to be 2009 or 10. Back when I still had Sarah drove a Silverado. My brother was driving a bright yellow Honda S2000 at the time.
It was a loud yellow.
And yes, it was. And it was a loud car.
Yes.
He had aftermarket exhaust on it. And so, yeah. Anyway, he was driving that at the time. I was driving the Silverado. He needed to borrow my truck to move something. I can't even remember what it was. Something for church, I'm sure. And so we swapped rides for the day. And I wasn't complaining.
Yeah.
It was a pretty fun little sports car with convertible top. And I don't think I had ever really gotten to drive a convertible up until that point. I test drove a Pontiac Solstice years prior to that.
Doesn't
but
count.
like getting to spend a full day. The Solstice was a pretty cool car. Like I almost bought that thing. Just money stood in my way, or lack thereof. But anyway, getting to spend a day with a S2000 definitely intrigued me a little. So I was like, yeah, sure. And I will never forget, I was on my lunch break, put the top down on the thing. I was stopped at the very first light. that we came to after exiting the work parking lot, and I hear,
Oh my goodness!
and that just totally messed
I
me
bet it
up. I
did.
was like, were they whistling at me? Was that for me? Like, what's going on? Because, like, no joke, this car is bright yellow and loud, and I've got the top down, and so I'm totally in my head at this point. Light turns green, and I stall because I'm just like, oh, what's going on? And so yeah, trying to be cool and in my loud car with the top down, and
Yep.
yeah, that's what happens at the first stoplight I get stopped at. Well, I regained myself and set on my way and trying to like look around, figure out who it was that whistled at me. Never really figured it out. Get back to work. I can't remember if it was that day or the next day, but one of my coworkers, John, was like giving me a hard time about it, and turns out it was him. And I was like, "Oh, you suck!" I was like, "You totally messed me up. You ruined my vibe, man."
Oh, that's too
So,
funny.
I definitely did not feel cool after that. But anyway, those are my really funny stories about learning to drive stick. A couple vehicles after that, like I said, I bought Cameron, my Camaro, and with 420 plus horsepower under the hood, it was very easy not to stall that car.
Yeah.
And it was an easy car to even teach people in. I taught a couple students in my youth group how to drive stick shift in that car. And so, Cooper, I know your first vehicle after that was a Mustang GT. I forgive you for betraying me and going the Ford route after learning in a Camaro, but whatever. That's cool. That's cool. But yeah, it was fairly easy car to learn to drive stick in, just because, like I said, it had so much power. If you stalled out in that thing, you tried.
Yeah.
That's not to say I hadn't done it a few times, but having a daily driver that's a stick is definitely the best way to learn. So, practical advice to all our listeners: if you want to learn to drive stick, best way to learn is to hack.
Yep, that's it.
Right?
I completely agree. I've had several. I've had a handful of Volkswagens. Of course, they're all manual transmissions. I had a Honda Civic, 2000 Honda Civic. It was a manual, and it was a blast. The truck that I went to college in, because I was still working on my first car, was my dad's 94 S10, and it was a manual, 4-speed, 5-speed, 4-cylinder. And it had dual exhaust, which for a whopping 2.4 liters and 4 cylinders, and a stupid 16-year-old kid, I thought I was bad. Right? It was.
It's amazing how low the bar is.
I know.
Right?
Yeah, I'm. There was all kinds of stuff that I did in that truck, to that truck, that Dad doesn't know about, and so yeah, it.
Well, he'll be asking.
I'm sure he will. I'm sure he will. It's oh man, yeah. It was a blast of a little truck, because it was, again, that first taste of freedom, and I don't know, there's something about shifting gears and bouncing down back roads with the windows down and stuff like that. It just it's special. Manual transmissions hold a special place in my heart. I don't have access to one right now, and I hate it. I want one, but
well, I know the 2013 Chevy Cruze.
Oh yeah, yeah. Just had the engine nearly rebuilt, didn't it?
Nearly. Let's see, the engine was dropped, the transmission was pulled off, new clutch assembly, all that good stuff. The smell of burning clutch, that's a good smell too.
Yep.
So, I've referenced, we've got 2 vehicles in my family. One's manual transmission, one is not. makes for interesting times when a vehicle's got to go in the
Mm.
shop and only one of the two people know how to drive the
Mm-hmm.
stick. But I think it's a skill that everyone should at least know the basics of and the principles of, because you never know when you will get stuck with uh, having to
Well, and
drive
that
a
was
stick,
that was
which,
always the big argument when I was growing up from my parents and other people my parents' age was, oh yeah, no, I wasn't allowed to drive until I knew how to drive a stick. I wasn't allowed to go anywhere or do anything
right.
because their parents would tell them, well, what if you're some outlandish huge story about being stuck on the side of the road and the only person that can drive is you
Yes.
and the only vehicle available is this manual transmission vehicle? What are you going to do? And it's almost a moot point anymore because of how few manual transmissions there are anymore.
Yeah, so Car and Driver shared a story, let's see, November 9th, 2019, about how it finally happened. EV sales, small as they are, have outpaced manuals in the third quarter of
That's
2019.
disgusting.
And that is sad. Like, electric cars are cool, especially Teslas, the acceleration factor and all that stuff. But the fact that EVs, as minuscule as they are, and I know California is like a whole nother story, they're selling out there like hotcakes, but the fact that electric vehicles are outpacing manuals is a
It's
sad
scary.
state
I
of
mean,
where
yeah.
we are. Yeah.
But when you think about
And
the way the auto industry is moving, though, too, more complex, more, all these components are
right.
more integrated and things like that. When
And they say it's for the betterment of
I'm
the
not
vehicles.
convinced.
So, yeah, well, like, okay, so car we've talked about and drooled a lot on this channel
Mm-hmm.
over is the brand new Chevrolet Corvette C8,
Yep.
the mid-engine
Yep.
Corvette. And so forever and always, except for first generation, the Corvette has been front drive, V8, rear wheel drive, had to be red, had to come in a convertible. Like those were things that were staples of the Chevy
Right. Right.
Corvette. Well, Chevy has broken the mold. They've moved the engine to the middle and just completely changed the skeleton and architecture of the vehicle entirely to the point where the C8, as it's currently constructed, will never have a manual transmission. And they've used that center tunnel where all the mechanical linkages would go, and it's like the solid backbone of the vehicle, which
Okay.
is important because if you know anything about Corvettes, the top
Right.
comes off
Right.
their Targa roof. So even the quote unquote coupe models have a removable roof panel. So whenever you have like complete open section up top, you're losing some strength and rigidity to the frame. And so Chevy engineers made up for that by really beefing up that center
Yeah.
tunnel. And yeah, all the reports I've heard is there will be no manual transmission in the C8 Corvette because it is impossible. And
Yeah.
that's sad because like that is a staple of the car. Now, the dual clutch automatic transmission that's in it can shift faster than any human ever
Right.
could, which is awesome in its own right. And that's kind of the direction we're going. It used to be the faster option on vehicles would be to get the manual.
Right.
The better, more fuel efficient option was to get the manual because you could control it all yourself. You can hold gears as long as you wanted to. You can shift as quickly as you wanted to. It was all under your control. And for the longest time, especially when automatics were 4 speeds, um, they were the slower option. They were more fuel thirsty.
Right.
But that is quickly changing as we're getting into 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 speed automatic
Yeah.
transmissions. And now we've got dual clutch and all this that now they're faster, they're more fuel efficient, and it's just sad.
Is it the quickness of the automatics? I mean, is it that Because for me, like, I went in to look at a Renegade not too long ago, and went to a
Mm-hmm.
Jeep dealership, and I was asking, "Do you have one with a manual transmission?" And because that's, if I get one, that's the one I want. Well, it's the base model,
Right.
stripped down, crank windows, manual locks, that kind of thing. It's a base model Jeep, and they didn't have one. And the guy asked me, "Is it
Right.
because you feel like you're more in control?" And I wanted to. I mean, my knee jerk was yes, but that's not all of it. I mean, there's something
Right.
special about shifting my own gears. There's something
Well,
special about this big. Maybe it's a manly thing. This big lever that changes through the gears. That I have to crank on, or the three pedals and stuff.
well,
It
I'd say,
just
yeah, it's more fun because you're more involved. You're not just sitting there
yeah
letting the
yeah
machine do
more
all the work.
involved, more a part of
And
the car.
yeah, and it's less of a video game and more of like an action.
Absolutely.
It's something you're doing. There are some curvy roads around here that even my little Chevy Cruze, the 1.4 liter turbo 4, I can't talk today. Uh, Even as pathetic as that little engine is, I'm going back to the James May theory of a car at its limits is more fun than a really powerful car not
Right.
at its limits. That car is fun to toss around the corners, to drive fast, and to row through the gears yourself. That if this Cruise Eco were an automatic, it would be nowhere near as
Right.
fun to drive. And I'm not saying it's an enthusiast car by any means, but it's a fun car to drive. That being said, yes, my car prior to it was 420 plus horsepower Camaro
Right.
SS, but that's neither here nor
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Well, maybe it
But
is that
yeah,
involvement that makes it. I don't know. It's a difficult thing to explain if you've never driven a manual transmission vehicle, to
yep,
try and convey to someone how much different it is, and how much more enjoyable. For me, it's way more enjoyable. My wife knows how to drive a stick, but she'd much rather have an automatic.
yep,
But she's
right,
also less interested in driving in the first place. So um,
right.
I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe it is just that involvement with the vehicle that makes the difference.
Well, I will say one thing that about broke me of my manual transmission habit was, so in my Camaro, I took it to a NASCAR race at Texas
Hmm.
Motor Speedway. Have you ever been to an event at
I have
Texas
not.
Motor Speedway? Okay, well, there are a lot of
Yeah.
people there, a lot, and traffic is horrendous to say the least. And the clutch on that car was, uh, it was
Yeah.
not light.
Yeah.
I'll put it that way. You had to know that you're pushing it, and that experience trying to leave after, I believe it was it might have been a Sunday race, so
Oh yeah.
everybody was leaving. I've been to a Saturday race before, and people will stay overnight and leave on Sunday, but it must have been a Sunday race. We were leaving. It took us 2 hours to get like out of the immediate vicinity of the racetrack, and sitting in traffic in that thing, scooting up like a foot at a time. I was about to
Yep.
say I'm done, and it actually was going to that race that I said never again am I driving to a NASCAR race. I was like, I will never go unless
Yeah.
someone goes with me. I've been to one since, and sure enough, I was sitting in the back seat of a Nissan Pathfinder Armada, with my
Yeah,
legs
buddy.
crossed, truly enjoying the
That's it.
experience. So, but yeah, traffic's kind of a killer. I've alluded to hills. Uh, More so when you're learning than anything else. Hills can be a killer. And generally, I keep an eye on my rearview mirror to see who's creeping up real close to me, uh, at a stoplight on a hill, because I'll go ahead and let go of the brake and do a little
Yeah.
rollback
Oh yeah.
just to let them know, hey, don't get too close. But yeah, um, it it's something else. And 9 times out of 10, I would rather drive a manual transmission. than not. But like road trips, my wife's car is amazing. It's automatic everything, automatic headlights, automatic wipers, automatic high beam,
Good grief.
lane keep, all that stuff. Like uh, it's fun. Adaptive cruise control,
Yeah.
so like you can like almost set it and forget it. And we're getting to the point where cars will drive themselves, and that
Yeah.
will definitely have to be automatic transmission vehicles. But they're cool in their own right. But man, there's just something about being able to rub through the gears yourself. And again, we keep coming back to it, but the involvement
Yeah.
that comes with
That-
rolling through the gears yourself. But we've talked about it and hinted around at it that it's there are less cars out there with manual transmissions. I think you said you've got a list of all the vehicles that are
Yeah, the
available right
title of
now,
this
brand new
the
with
title of
manual
this article:
transmission.
Every
Still
2020
got that
car,
pulled
truck,
up?
and SUV available with a manual transmission, and it's broken down by manufacturer. Um, but yeah, the
Okay.
subtitle to it: the manual may be dying, but there are still some options. This is from automobilemag.com, and I'll just kind of skim through here. I won't list them all off, but Aston Martin. Yeah. So the
We'll
Aston
put a
Martin
link in the show
AMR
notes.
Vantage, you can still get a manual in. There are 4. Yeah, I know, right? There are 4
Naturally.
BMW vehicles you can still get a manual in. The 2 Series, the 4 Series, and then the M2 and the M4. Fiat Chrysler, FCA, they have a handful, a couple of Fiats, a couple of Jeeps, and the Dodge Challenger. You cannot get a manual in the Charger, but you can in the Challenger. So, and then Ford has the Mustang and the GT350 on here, but you cannot get one in the GT500.
Which again, they're going to those super quick automatic dual clutch automatics that again they're faster in shift than any human ever could. But again, you're taking away the fun factor of it. Like the Camaro ZL1, you can get the 10-speed automatic in there, and 9 times out of 10 you're going to be better lap times with that automatic.
No, that's all right.
Sorry, I'll get off my
on the Mustang breakdown. It says 50% of the current Mustang GT buyers and 20% of the Mustang EcoBoost buyers choose the 6-speed manual. That was an interesting breakdown to me, and I think it again speaks to the enthusiast element. More enthusiasts are going to be purchasing the V8 option over the EcoBoost option. And then, it does not offer the GT500. And this speaks to, I think, at least a contributing factor as to why the manuals are dying. It says the 19 Fiesta is available with a manual, but there are no 20 Fiestas. Fiestas are going away for 2020. This one surprised me, actually. For GM, there are 3. Can you guess what they are? Let me do that. Can you guess what the 3 vehicles are you can still get a manual in from GM? Yep.
So the Camaro.
No.
The Cruise.
For 2020, there's not a manual option.
Really? Which Cruise is being phased out. Let's see. The Spark.
No, Sonic's not on here either.
And the Sonic. Because
the third one
Sonic's
is the CT4 or CT5.
So what's the third one? Oh, okay. So
that was the one that surprised me. That Cadillac is still offering that option, but that's on the same platform as the Camaro, isn't it? Yeah. So Genesis has 1. Yes. Honda's got 3. Hyundai has 4, which is a little surprising. The Accent, the Elantra, the Veloster, and the Venue.
Well, one thing that we still, as enthusiasts, have in our favor is they're generally cheaper
Yeah.
Usually the automatic is like a $2,000 option, if it's an option. So when you say Hyundai's got a lot, it's usually their cheaper vehicles, and then
Right.
they're
Right.
more sporty,
Kia Forte and
enthusiastic
Soul.
vehicles.
Mazda has a couple. Mini has 4.
Mhm.
It looks like all of their models you can get a manual in. Mitsubishi, I
Yep.
didn't even know they were still making cars. Um, Nissan, and this was one. The Frontier, I think, is the only pickup on this list. Well, yeah, they've been building the
That's
same
because it's
Frontier
like
for
20 years
decades.
old
So,
currently.
oh,
They've just given
yep.
it minor
I mean, they're
facelifts
not
here and
bad
there, a
looking
little nip, a
trucks.
little
They're just
tuck.
old.
But that is an old truck.
Porsche's got a couple.
Yes,
Subaru.
yes, yes.
Actually, it was a different article. I can't remember where I found it, but the majority of the manual transmission market are from Subaru. Um, and I don't know if that's just something
Interesting.
that Subaru pushes or if it's the demographic of people that buy Subarus usually. But that was an interesting. I mean, it was like, well, yeah,
It's a
and
WRX crowd.
but I mean, it was like, I want to say like 40% of the manual transmissions sold every year are Subarus. I mean, it was a huge market share of vehicles. Toyota's got a couple. Oh, the Tacoma is still on there, so you can't. So there's
Yeah.
2 trucks that you can get a manual in. Yep, and then
The
Volkswagen's got
good
a
old
couple.
taco.
The Golf and the Jetta. Um,
So as that list continues to get smaller, you're going to
yeah,
see less and less people knowing how to drive sticks because as manufacturers quit making new ones, there are less and less used ones on the market, which leads to another story we found with Car and Driver, this one from December. So for those of you who don't know, Car and Driver has a whole campaign called hashtag Save the Manuals. And so they are leading the fight to save the manuals. But so November they posted the article I referenced earlier about EVs outselling uh, manual transmissions. They followed that up in December with carjackers
oh
plan
my goodness.
foiled because they can't drive a stick shift. And so it's going on about a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old boy who were uh, hijacking and mugging and trying to carjack a gentleman, and they got to the point of getting his keys from him and going over to the vehicle and realizing that they could not, in fact, drive it away. And so they say here, one can only imagine the conversations the guys had to admit to each other that they didn't know how to drive that car. At that point, they fled the scene, but were later found by police. The 15 and 17-year-old suspects are now facing a slew of charges, not to mention popular ridicule such as the Toronto Sun's
Oh
newspaper's
man.
headline calling them stick shift simpletons. So turns out the owner of the Volkswagen Jetta GLI in VW's theft commercial from earlier this year, who doesn't lock his car because it's a stick shift, has a pretty valid point. So I don't want to give away too many secrets. I don't just flaunt it or anything, but I don't worry too much if I've forgotten to lock my car because, first of all, I don't keep anything valuable in it. Second of all, I'm not really afraid that it's going to go off on its own because it's, again, not a super exciting car, but I don't know
And
that too many people would know how
so
to
for
drive
our
it
listeners, what was your address again? No, I'm
for
just
that
kidding.
very
I'm just
reason.
kidding.
So
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right.
it's in the garage when we talked about this. Yeah. So, yes, but yeah, I do lock my vehicle every chance I get. But like I said, I don't worry over, did I forget to lock my car? Just because I know it's
Yep.
not going to
Yep.
grow legs and walk away, Lord willing. So, um, for that very reason. So, do you have any
Well,
other
I
thoughts
definitely
on
think that
Save the Manuals?
that we ought to. I mean, I understand technology. Well, for instance, the Corvette, right? GM has reached the pinnacle with the C7 of what they can do with a front engine rear drive 2-seater sports car. And in order to go faster, they had to change things around. It doesn't make me like it anymore, but I'm certain that technological advances have a direct impact on losing the manual transmission.
Yep, for sure. And as we get to the point where, self-driving vehicles become more the norm, we're only going to see more and more automatics because, again, self-driving means everything from switching gears to steering. So it's going to be a growing trend that we as enthusiasts need to continue to speak up and sound out. I will say, given the situation in my family, when the Cruise is replaced, it will be by an automatic. So maybe we won't replace it. Maybe we'll just add to and keep the Cruise around for when my son's old enough to drive.
Got to keep it alive.
He'll learn to drive in a stick shift. We'll see if Nelly. Yeah, we'll see if Nelly lasts that long. Tucker's only 2 at this point. So we'll see there. But that's fun. So as always, Garage Talk is a discussion about all things automotive, and we really want to keep the discussion going past this podcast. And we've got all sorts of ways you can keep in touch with us, whether it's on social media. We're Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at GT Garage Talk. You can email us at gtgaragetalk@gmail.com. You can go to our website. I've been working on that all day today, kind of cleaning it up, making it look nicer. It's a constant work in progress because I'm a perfectionist at heart. But that's gtgaragetalk.com. Those are all the ways you can get back in touch with us. And speaking of our social media, so we're recording this. Today is March 28th of 2020. And this week, as part of the fun, everyone knows at this point, coronavirus is in the news everywhere. And we've tried to keep it out of this episode as much as possible, just because we want to continue giving you fun content to listen to get your mind off of the situation around us. And anyway, this week, as a fun activity for those stuck at home, stuck in quarantine, or to keep Facebook from being flooded with stories about coronavirus and quarantine, we shared a fun little activity of car bingo. And so next week, on April 17th, we'll actually be giving shout outs to everyone who ended up with a bingo on our car bingo challenge. But as of this recording, at 3:55 p.m. on March 28th, 2020, we've had one person almost get a blackout board. And I just want to give a shout out to your brother-in-law, Zach James. So that was pretty awesome. The only one he was missing was driving an electric car. And I told him, I was like, dude, we got to get you in a Tesla.
There you go. I wondered.
Which he did not shoot me down on.
I have never actually driven an electric vehicle either. But I've driven electric forklifts. I've driven electric golf carts, things like that. So I wondered if that would give me credit, but I left it off just to be fair. So
right, yeah. So mine was a Chevy Bolt, which is Chevrolet's full electric vehicle. I'm not gonna lie, it was fun to drive. It was at the DFW Auto Show a couple of years ago. They've always got a bunch of vehicles outside that you can sign your name up and be email spammed for the rest of eternity for the chance to drive a bunch of vehicles. And me being the gearhead that I am, I was like, this is my chance to drive an electric vehicle. I'm going to take it. And it was fun. It was different. And as nerdy as I am with technology, the technology that they are putting in electric vehicles far surpasses what they're putting in normal internal combustion vehicles. So that in itself was fun, but got to play with regenerative braking and doing the one pedals, basically driving where to stop, you take your foot off the gas and it stops for you. It would take some getting used
Yeah.
to, but I can make a living out of that. The Tesla Model Y is making all big news right now, so that's their new electric SUV, and trying to figure out a way in which I could replace Nelly with a Tesla Model Y. And naturally, we would give all our listeners the
Oh,
scoop of
absolutely. Yeah.
what it's like living with a Tesla day in and day
Oh my
out. But
goodness.
they're just so darn expensive that I can't quite figure that one out. But we will get there one day. I firmly believe. I'll at least test drive one, and we'll put that up on our podcast and maybe our YouTube. So we're still trying to get our YouTube really up and rolling right now. It's just audio only of our podcast, but like I said, we've got plans in the future of growing all things, which leads me into a spiel that I've just got to make for all our listeners. There is a way for you to support Garage Talk. We shared with you on previous episodes that we want to grow this into something even bigger than just a podcast. We do want to start a YouTube car review channel where we do fun things, crazy things, give y'all, our listeners, all the automotive news and reviews and all that good stuff. But that just takes some support from our listeners, takes some support from anyone and everyone that would like to invest in Garage Talk. And so on our website, gtgaragetalk.com/support is actually a way of 6 different ways that you can support what we are doing here at Garage Talk. Not all of them require you spending a penny with us. Some are just as simple as sharing this podcast with all your friends, all your families, and letting people know, because you heard it at the beginning of this episode. We've got a commercial running, and sponsors help pay the bills. All you have to do is sit through a commercial. But that's one easy way where you really don't have to do anything except, tell your friends about this podcast. But anyway, gtgaragetalk.com/support will give you all the different ways that you can give back to us. We've actually got different milestones we're trying to hit where we will have enough money to buy certain equipment to go more mobile. And our last milestone is getting us to a point where we can truly have a video-heavy, video-intensive YouTube presence where we truly are doing car reviews and giving y'all really up-to-date information. So as of this recording, we're 8% of our way to our first milestone. So thank y'all so much for sharing this podcast, listening to this podcast, buying merchandise from us. We have merchandise now, Matt, and it's crazy. We've had some people buy some stickers from us. I've got a couple t-shirts that are in the mail as of this recording. By next week's episode, I will actually have the t-shirts. I will be wearing my Garage Talk t-shirt as I'm recording Garage Talk. So very much looking forward to that. And last but not least, while I'm talking about t-shirts, we set up a Patreon where there are different levels at which you can support us. And one of the levels is our quarterly t-shirt club. And in episode 6 of our podcast, we talked about dream cars, and a car that you and I both dreamed over and had car posters of was a Plymouth Prowler. And one of the things we love about it is its ample backside. And so we've got a really cool t-shirt for this quarter, basically Sunday 2020, that if you give at that Patreon level, you will get a free t-shirt.
I love that shirt.
The ample backside of the Plymouth Prowler. So yes. So anyway, just a quick shout out, but we thank you just for listening to our podcast. Like I said, listen, share with all your friends. We will grow this into a community that can do great things. We appreciate y'all bearing with us through this episode. We're actually recording remotely today. So I'm in my house, Matt's at his house. We're miles away from each other, but through the wonders of our Anchor.fm podcast hosting, that we're able to record remotely. And so just one of the things that we're able to do through the wonders of technology. But we thank all y'all for listening, and until next time, bye.